All right, welcome everybody. It's great to see everybody. My name is Dimitri. For those of you who don't know me or haven't met me yet, I'm part of the product management team here at Ready Education. Been here a while, so hopefully you've seen me in some time, either through these training webinars or through some other venue. I'm really happy today. Today is September's release, so we're able to talk a little bit more about the September release. We're going to do focus our webinar around training. I'm actually accompanied today by a few of my colleagues. Altamas Jamil, who's one of our product managers here on the team, who's really been spearheading a lot of the work around contact trace, as well as John Paul, who's our head of QA, and who's really going to be able to dig into the nuts and bolts of these two new features that we're going to be talking about today. So like I said, today's the training release. A little bit of housekeeping before we get in. Obviously, you can use the Q&A section. Feel free to click on the Q&A and ask any questions. You can also pop it into the chat. We'll be, going through the various different parts of our demo and going back and forth between our slides. So feel free to jump in and ask questions at any time. We'll have a section at the end allocated for questions, but really feel free to jump in anytime. Without further ado, we're going to pop right into the webinar. So our agenda for today is focused around two key pieces: multi-audience support, which is a really great feature when you're talking about data and being able to see and access data, when you're talking about privacy, when you're talking about who can access what data. Really, really important for workflows, very key for a variety of workflows for institution partners. And then second to that is our Campus Pass emails. And that's another key piece for the contact trace entitlement. Both of these fall under CT Plus, Contact Trace Plus, which is a add-on as part of our Ready Basic. And it's really key that obviously you have this entitlement to be able to see these features. If you don't, not a worry. You can always reach out to your closest contact at Ready, typically a customer success consultant or an activation manager. So feel free to reach out to those folks to really get more information and get signed up for this. But the Campus Pass emails will allow your students to be able to see their Campus Pass, which some institutions are using as vaccine passports or exemption passports, to see that through their emails, which is really nice because it avoids the need to have necessarily a mobile app. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to John Paul, and he will be taking us through these two features. Hey, John Paul, you're on mute. It's classic. It's not a webinar unless somebody's on mute. I'm glad we got that one out of the way right away.
Thanks, Tim. It's my pleasure to present to you all today. My name is John Paul. I'm the team lead of our QA team here at Ready Education, and I'll be delivering today's training session. So let's jump right in. I'm going to be able to give you a live demo as well as walk you through the details of the feature, of both of these features. So let's jump right in. We're going to start with multi-audience. Multi-audience support. So multi-audience is the ability to control who sees what information within the contact trace module, and this uses our audiences feature. You can restrict an admin, you can restrict a Campus Cloud user so that they can see data only for students who are in audiences that you specify. So let's take the example of contact trace cases. Before, any admin who had access to cases could see data for any student case across any case information for any student in the school. But now with our multi-audience feature, you have the option to limit the data that your Campus Cloud admin can see. You can grant an admin access to an audience, and then they can see data for students who are members of that audience, but they can't see data for other users. Or you can grant access to all audiences, and then your admin will be able to see data for any student in any audience. So let's see this in action. I'm going to bring up an example of Campus Cloud here. All right. So this is Campus Cloud. This is what you see when you log in. Audiences. Audiences are here. Let's just do a quick look at these so that everyone knows what I mean when I'm talking about an audience. An audience is a collection of students. Here are some of the audiences that I'm going to be using in today's test. So we're going to use an audience called Audience 1, Audience 2, and Audience 3. And you can see, for example, if I click on the audience, you can see the users that I have placed into this audience. Today, we're working off of our test, off of our staging environment. So you'll see some data that is used in our tests. So here you can see, for example, we are doing some tests with users 1, 2, 3, 4. The point is that there are 4 users within this audience. Likewise here, there's 2 users within audience number 3, and there's 3 users within audience number 1. So just keep this picture, this little section here in your mind as we talk about the multi-audience permission. So let's see multi-audience in action. Let's go and look at our team settings, which is the page where we actually set permissions for any user. And let's go as if we were creating a new user. So the first thing to notice is that if you scroll down on this page, you will see under the heading of contact trace, there are some new permissions. There is this permission here, which is called limit access to specific audiences. There's this other permission here, which is called limit access to specific forms. And these 2 permissions taken together really are the crux of our multi-audience permission here. So keep this part in your mind as well. When you come over here to the side here, you can see the values for these permissions. So by default here, a new user will have access to all audiences within Campus Cloud. And they will also have access to all forms within Campus Cloud. So let's go and have a look at what's in this menu here. The default is all audiences. This is the list of audiences within Campus Cloud. So we were just looking at the list of audiences in the screen where I showed you before, where we had audience 1, 2, and 3. And you can see those audiences are shown here in this menu among the other audiences that we have in our test environment here. So let's step out of this permissions screen for a minute and let's come over here to manage cases. So if we come to manage cases, the first thing to notice is that there is an audiences filter within the manage cases page. Now I can use this filter to view cases. This is my big list of cases. I can use this audiences filter to view cases only for students within a specific audience. So let's use one of the audiences that we looked at before. Let's look at audience 1. Out of the students in audience 1, 2 of these students have cases. And these are the 2 cases here. So my iOS test user has a case. My Android user has a case. There was a 3rd user in this audience, but that user does not have a case. So when I apply this filter, I see only cases for the students that are within this audience. This is the audience filter. When I use the filter, I see only the cases for the students in this audience. So that part is pretty straightforward. One thing to know, though, is that the audience filter, the multi-audience permission affects only, it acts only within the contact trace module. So elsewhere in Campus Cloud, you will see some audience filters. Unless those audience filters are within contact trace, they're not affected by multi-audience. You'll recall that when we were looking at team settings over here, the limit audience permission was underneath contact trace. And that's to represent how this permission here, these multi-audience permissions, affect data viewed within contact trace, but they don't affect audiences elsewhere in our platform. Let's have a look at another user here. This is a user who has no limits on any audience, no limits on any form. For comparison's sake, let's look at a user who does have a limit on audiences and who does have a limit on forms. Whoops. This here, you'll see this is in an incognito window. This is to allow me to have two users open in two different windows at the same time. So this is my unlimited user here. And then we also have a limited user here that we're going to use to compare and contrast as we do our training in multi-audience. And you can see here this user has a limited audience. So multi-audience has been engaged here. This user's name is limit audience, just to show that this is our limited user. The other one is our unlimited user. So I'm going to show you here the profile for this user. You can see here, when I look at my limited user, I have limited access to 2 audiences, and I have limited access to 2 forums. So now let's see how that is reflected when we come over to this screen here and when we look at manage cases. So let's look at manage cases for my limited user. This here, this cases list, does not show all the cases that are available because this user has a limited audience permission. What you see here is a list of cases for students who are in the audiences that are within my multi-audience permission. So I have access here with my limited user to 2 audiences. And within those 2 audiences, there's a number of students, and those students have a total of 4 cases. And that's what we see here. We see a total of 4 cases. Let's compare this to my unlimited user who's behind here. Look at manage cases for this user. You'll see here, this is the full list of cases. So there's about 12 cases in my test school here. And because my user has no limits, I can see them all. But for my limited user, I don't see them all. I see only the cases for students who are within the audiences in my multi-audience permission. And here, remember we talked about the audiences filter. The values that I see in this audiences filter are the 2 audiences that I have permission to access. Whereas if we contrast here, this audiences filter for my unlimited user can apply a filter and select any audience. So I can choose any filter and filter based on filter to show only the cases that are within this audience. And I can choose any audience within Campus Cloud. There's no limit. But over here for my limited user, not only do I see only the cases that I have access to see, but I'm only able to see the filters here that I have access to see. Remember, my user had access to 2 filters. These are those 2 filters, audience 2 and audience 3. And then across those 2 filters, there's a total of 4 cases. There's no sign of any other audiences. There's no data for any students in any other audiences. And the audiences are not selectable here in this filter. There's no sign of the other audiences. It's as if they are masked from the user. So there are
question while you're on the topic, John Paul, sorry to interrupt you. Quick question while you're on the topic. Given that you're a limited user, can you edit those audiences that you do have access to?
Can I edit the audiences that I do have access to? Depending on my permission, yes, you can. If I have the audience's permission, I can edit those audiences.
Okay, so it's kind of irregardless of the limited piece, right? So if you have audiences, then you can edit them as you would normally, whether you're limited or not.
Correct.
Okay, so Allison, that was a question from Allison. So hopefully, Allison, I gave you what you're looking for. It's really based on your permissions, irrespective of what kind of John Paul is showing right here. Perfect. That was covered. Another quick question that came in, John Paul, was given that this is a limited audience, is it safe to say that if I give somebody this limited audience, I don't have to worry that they would see other data anywhere else in the platform if given the right permissions?
Just to repeat the point that we made before, the limit audience permission affects, or the multi-audiences permissions affect contact trace only. So within the contact trace module, all of the data for students who are outside your multi-audience permission will be hidden. But if you wanted to go elsewhere in the platform and look at an audience and see, for example, who was in that audience, once you step outside the contact trace module, the multi-audience permission no longer applies. So it's used to restrict what you can see within contact trace, but elsewhere within the platform, the limit audience permission does not apply, and you can manipulate or work with audiences as if there was no multi-audience permission. Does that answer your question?
I believe so. Thanks a lot. That came from Angela. Thanks a lot, Angela. That's it for the questions so far. John Paul, continue on.
Thanks, Tim. Okay. So basically what we're getting at here is that there are some users who are within the limits of your multi-audience permission, and there are some users who are out of bounds. These are the students in our example here that are within the limit of multi-audience, and the other students here that we can see when we look with an unlimited user, these students are out of bounds. I don't see them at all. So what happens, given that there are students within bounds and out of bounds, what happens when you try to update the case of a student that you don't have permission to? So let's try this. We can use this create case dialog box here to edit a user who already exists. So this is my power user. This user is actually this guy over here. So this user already exists, but is out of bounds, outside the limit of my multi-audience permission. So let's try to edit this user. Let's try to change my status. If I try to change this status for a user who's out of bounds, I'm going to get an error message. You do not have permission to create a case for that user. What's happening here is this user is completely masked from this user here. This guy is completely masked from my limited user. So the limited user is trying to create a case because he's not sure that this user here exists. But this user does exist and is just out of bounds. So that's why we get this error message here that says basically you cannot do what you're trying to do. You cannot create a case. You cannot edit a case for this user. So if I try to edit a case for a user who is out of bounds, I'm going to get an error message like we see here. And more generally, users with the multi-audience permission cannot create a case. Let's give this a try. We'll use an email address that clearly does not exist in our system. This email address here does not exist in our system. I'm just typing in a random sentence here just to make sure that I get a user who does not exist. So this is as if I'm creating a new user here, and let's try to say this user is vaccinated. Same error message. The principle here is that a user who has a limited multi-audience permission cannot create a case for a user. If I try to edit a user who's existing somewhere where I don't have permission, I'm going to also get an error message. If I try to edit a user who is within my bounds of what I am allowed to, of the users I'm allowed to see within multi-audience, if I try to edit a user who is within, I'll be able to update their case. But if I'm trying to update for a user who is outside, out of bounds, I'm not going to be able to do that. So let's put cases aside for a minute and let's look at QR codes. So many of the changes that we just talked about for cases also apply to QR codes. And again, we're going to do the same thing here with a kind of compare and contrast between my unlimited user and my limited user. So for QR codes, the admin will see data for students only in audiences that they have permission to. So this is my unlimited user. This user, when I look at QR codes, I'm able to see there are 5 students who checked into dining location 1, 3 for number 2. These 2 locations each have this number of students that checked in, and nobody checked into my first testing center. This is an unlimited view of the QR code data in Campus Cloud. But how does this look to our limited user? All of the users who checked into our QR code locations are outside the limit of my multi-audience permission. And just like with cases, that data is masked from my view. So as far as this limited user is concerned, I can't see anyone who's checked into any of these locations here because they are all outside of the boundary of what I'm able to see with my multi-audience permission. So the same principle applies. You see data only for students in the audiences that you have permission to. If there's data for students who are out of bounds, outside your multi-audience permission, that data is hidden, like we're seeing here. The data is just hidden from the user. Similarly, if I try to check in a user who is in an audience outside of what I have permission on, I'm going to get an error message. So if I try to, whoops, sorry, I'm in the wrong place here. If I come here and if I try to add a check-in, if I try to check in a user who does not exist, who exists outside my multi-audience permission, say I try to check them in yesterday, they came by, I'm not going to be able to do this because this user is outside of my permissions. And you're going to get an error message, just basically analogous to what has happened in cases. The permission to limit access to specific forms is very similar to limiting access to specific audiences. So let's just look for a minute here at Manage Forms for both my limited user and my unlimited user. This is my unlimited user here. So again, we see the totality of results, form results, across Campus Cloud. So here you can see 4 users today in our daily summary. 4 users came through and completed the form, which is a testing form. Out of those 4, only one of those is within the limit of my multi-audience permission for this limited user. Oh, sorry, 2 of them. And you can see here for this user who has a limited audience permission, the data is restricted. The 2 users who are outside of my multi-audience permission are simply masked from the view here. I don't see their results. I don't see them here. I'm not going to see them here. I'm not going to see it if I download their a CSV file of their results. It's just going to be hidden from my view. And similarly to what we had before, this audiences filter here, where I can filter and see only form results for people within a specific audience. The only choices that I have to choose here are the audiences that are given to me within my multi-audience permission. So whereas my user over here can see all the audiences, my limited user can choose only the ones that are granted access. And then another thing to notice here when we're looking at forms is that this user here, recall that this user has access to only 2 forms. Remember, we gave access to 2 audiences and 2 forms. This user will see only 2 forms here. These are the 2. Whereas my unlimited user will be able to see all the forms in our platform. So there's 4 of them in total. I see all 4 forms here, but my limited user will see only the 2 forms that I have access to. So there's two permissions at play here when we look at this, when we look at manage forms. You will see the form limitation, because the user will only see the number of forms that they're given access to. And then furthermore, within those forms that they have access to, they're only going to see data for the users that they have access to, users within the audiences that they're given permission to see. And these menus here, this one filter here gives access and reflects the multi-audience permission. So there are two permissions at play here for manage forms. Are there any questions about this? I'll just quickly. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dim.
No questions. Yeah, no questions right now. One question came in, Allison. Who may give a permission? So around so you mentioned the permissions, but who can give out those permissions?
You have the if you have the permission that lets you create new team members, that is, so this permission here gives you the ability to create new team members. And when you have the ability to create new team members, you automatically get the ability to grant them these permissions, including limiting access to specific audiences and limiting access to specific forms.
Nice, that covers the question, thank you. If you were looking more around just data visibility, for example, I know one common use case is around HR. So there are people who can only see staff and faculty, and then those who only can see students. For that specific use case, again, just kind of based on user, it seems like we should, the key there would be around audiences. And that even if somebody could see the form insofar that they can't see the user's data, so what they said, so that, you know, if an HR person can't show that there's a faculty, a student submission on the vaccination status, given that that's the key thing, I think if we just did audiences and we'd cover it. Forms would be great as well, but just to make sure that the audience understands, the audiences piece is the key piece as far as data visibility. Is that correct, Jean-Paul?
Yeah, by using the multi-audience permission to limit access to specific audiences, you can basically control whether a student is visible or not visible within Campus Cloud to another admin.
Perfect. Under the health and wellness contact trace piece.
Within contact trace. Yeah. You can.
And a quick follow-up.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, and another quick follow-up here. When you mentioned you have to have the ability to invite other team members, is it also fair to say that you need that, and you need to have the permission around contact trace and health and wellness to be able to share that with somebody else and invite them?
Is this a follow-up to Debbie's question?
It would be well, it was follow-up to Allison's question around who may give permission, and so that Debbie's question then is, you can only give permission if A, you have the ability to invite other members, and then B, you have the ability, you have those abilities in the first place, such as audiences and forms and so on.
That's correct. That's correct. That's a good specificity. You can only grant permissions that you do have. So you can't grant access to a form that you don't have access to yourself, for example. You can't grant access to an audience that you don't have access to yourself.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that covers the question.
Okay.
I don't see anything else just yet, but I'll monitor the questions. If anything comes in, feel free to send it over, but you can continue, Jean-Paul.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm gonna just jump over here. We'll show the last thing for health and wellness. We'll show the health and wellness dashboard. This is the health and wellness dashboard for my unlimited user. In a nutshell, this entire dashboard is affected by your multi-audience permissions. You're going to see only data for students within the audiences you have permission to. And any data having to do with forms, you're going to see that data only for forms that you have permission to. So here, right, here's all the forms that are available. I can see all 4. This is my unlimited user. This is the total list of audiences, again, unlimited. All this data here reflects the totality of the data within Campus Cloud. All these numbers that you see here, as well as these ones here, and then we can keep scrolling down. All the numbers on this dashboard are filtered through multi-audience, i.e. here, this is an unlimited user. I'm going to see everything in this dashboard. If I come over to here for my limited user, you can see that the numbers are reduced. And that is because I don't have access to all audiences. I have access to only 2 audiences, a total of 4 students. So all of the data on this dashboard is going to be for only the 4 students in my 2 audiences. And additionally, anywhere where there is information about forms, that's going to further be filtered down by my forms restriction. And then if we scroll down the dashboard like this, that's going to be the case all the way through. You can see there's basically no data here. So this dashboard is affected by both the limit access to specific audience permission and the limit access to specific forms permission. And like elsewhere in the platform, anywhere that there is a download link, the filter applies to that download link as well. So that's the end of multi-audience. Are there any questions about multi-audience before we move on to the next section of our demo here?
Nothing currently. I think we answered everything that came through.
Okay.
While you're setting up, we'll see if anything else comes through from the audience, but otherwise you can go ahead and set up for the next part of the demo.
Okay, that sounds good. Next part of the demo is has to do with audiences. We are expanding the capabilities of audiences. Before, you could only add registered app users to an audience. A person had to have an app account, or else you couldn't use them in any part of Campus Cloud that involved audiences. You could only add a registered app user with an app account to an audience. The way we are expanding the capabilities of audiences is that now you can add any email address to an audience, whether they have an app account or not. So let's try that. So we have come to look at audiences, which is under the students menu. So here we are. And let's look at this audience of 4 users. This is the name of the audience. These are the users within the audience. Let's add a user to this audience. Let's add an app user. I have a bunch of test accounts. Here are some of them. So I can search for an email address. And when I type in some characters, I'm going to start to get the matches for that email address. So you can see here all these email addresses match the string John Paul. There's John Paul testing with full contact trace permissions, with restricted permissions, etc., etc. There's a bunch. I'm just going to pick one of my test accounts randomly and add it to the audience. So what you do is simply select it from the list and click. And you can see it gets added here, and it appears under the other 4. This little person icon here means I am a registered app user. So you can see by looking at the list of users in this audience that some of them are registered app users. They have app accounts. And some of them have this little email icon here. That means no registered app account. This means we interact with this user basically by email instead of them being an app user who's like an actual person. Let's see what happens if we try to add an arbitrary email address. So again, let's pick an email address that does not exist in our system. So I'm just going to type basically random characters, knowing that the email address that I type is not going to exist in our system. So let's just start with, make it look like a protein. What happens here is that as soon as Campus Cloud detects that you have typed an email address, a valid email address with a name at a domain like this, when Campus Cloud realizes that you have typed an email address, it gives you the option to select this and add it to your audience. Add this email address to your audience. You have to click to add it. So I'm going to click now on this on my email address to add to the list of users. And you can see here it gets added to the list of users. You can see here as well this little email icon means I'm not a registered app user. I am just an email address. And then we can update the audience. See, now we have added 2 users. We used to be 4 users. Now we're up to 6. And you can click the list to see, click this to see the list of users. Click this to see the list of users. There you go. So here's my one. Here's the other. Whenever you create an audience, you can add registered email addresses, i.e. the ones that have app accounts. You can add unregistered addresses, or you can add a combination of the two. So when you upload a CSV file to create an audience, you can have unregistered email addresses in that list, and they will be added to the new audience. So if you upload a CSV file and it has a bunch of email addresses of app users and some email addresses that do not have app accounts, those will all be added to your new audience. And they will appear like we're showing here. Some of them will have the little person icon. Oops. Some of them will have the little person icon, and some of them will have the little email address icon.
Quick question on that topic, Jean-Paul. If a user becomes a registered user, an app user, but was formerly an email when you added them to the audience, I guess first question is, would that icon change? And then is there any other ramifications of a user kind of turning into a registered user?
Don't believe there are other ramifications. Ultimash, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the flow is that that user would then have their app account connected up to their email address in Campus Cloud and would be treated from that point forward as if they were an app user.
Nice.
I notice we're at 2:40 here, so I'm going to move on to creating an announcement.
While you're doing that, Allison asked, also, will they be able to upload vaccines and test results to the app? So I would imagine if they once they become a registered user, initially as an email, they can always follow the web-based flows through forms to do those 2 actions of uploading and setting test results. And then once they become a registered user on the app, they can do those same workflows from the app. It all gets sent to the same case because it was initially an email, and when they logged in, then their app account gets connected to that email. So yes, they can do it prior, then after they register, they can do it after. It all stays together.
Yep. Thanks.
There's a correction on that. That doesn't happen, Dimitri. There's no linking of app and email accounts right now. They stay as separate. So email, and let's say if the student has an email and they complete the web form, they have their own case. Once the student has their registered app account, they have a new case that's created. So that export of data needs to happen manually right now. And yeah, that's even true for the audiences piece. Like, we don't detect right now that it's automatically a registered user. That part is going to be coming in later phases. We're doing this in step by step. That's the ideal scenario that we're trying to get to, but there's a lot of complexity that we're trying to resolve in terms of like the back end and the infrastructure before we get to that point. So we are moving towards there, but it's not there right now.
Okay, so for now, Allison and folks here, so the key is that the email and the way they registered is kind of with the uniqueness of the cases. So it'll be email plus whether they were web when they started or whether they were an app user when they started. So you'll have 2 different cases. You can search the case list, get both cases, and then either export from one and import to the other so that you can centralize and then delete the old case. But like Altamash said, maybe in the future we'll be able to have that. Cool. There's no other questions for now, Jean-Paul. You can continue. Like you said, we're running a bit short on time.
Thanks, Altamash, for Let's look at Campus Pass email next, because that's the important one that we want to cover in case we are short on time. So Campus Pass email. Campus Cloud now sends a user's Campus Pass by email, as well as displaying it in the app. Remember that a Campus Pass is generated when a user completes a form that uses logic to update their case. So, for example, if you have a student who's completing a symptom tracker report and you ask a question like, are you displaying symptoms such as a fever or cough? And if the user answers yes, then they're going to go through to a result block. That result block will use logic to update their case. And when that happens, there will be a Campus Pass generated. So just as a matter of review, let's look at a form just to see the logic in action. So let's look at our testing form. We'll look at the form builder for this form. You can see here, these are the questions that make up the form. And if we scroll down to the results, you can see here I have 3 different results. And here you can see this form uses logic. So for example, if I take a path through the form that lands me on this result number 5, which is a positive test result, my case status will be updated to be self-reported. And then here as well, if I follow this path through and I get onto this result also uses logic. It's going to update my case to COVID confirmed. And same thing down here. If I say that I have had a negative test, then you can see here we use the logic to update my case and say that my user has a clear case status. Now, whenever I come through a form and I land on one of these blocks with logic here, my case status will be updated and this will generate a Campus Pass. So the Campus Pass that corresponds to the user's case status. So here, for example, if I end up on this block and I get a case status of clear, if I'm doing this through the app, the next thing that I will see is the Campus Pass that is associated with the case status of clear. The user's case is updated in the back end, and the Campus Pass that corresponds to their case status appears in the app. The pass stays visible for 60 seconds and then it is hidden, and the user can access it again from the health and wellness section of the app. So what's new for this feature, Campus Pass email, is that when the Campus Pass appears in the app, it is also sent to users by email. So here, what we'll do is we'll go through this form, we'll go through this testing form here, and we'll complete it as if I had just received a positive COVID test. So this is my app here. Let's use the QR code scanner. And let's scan, whoops. Where did I go? We'll come here and we'll scan through this form. I have scanned the QR code and this has given me access to the form. So you can see here what I'm going through. So have I been tested? Yes. Upload a photo of your form result. Just take a picture of this, my speaker's notes. And the result of my test was positive. You can see here my Campus Pass appears in the app. So this pass is going to stay visible for 60 seconds and then it's going to be hidden. Now, what's different is that we're also sending this pass by email. So when I come to my email here, I will also receive a campus pass. Now this takes a couple of minutes. So given that we are coming up to the end of our time here, I'm going to just show you a campus pass that was generated earlier in the day. When you look at a campus pass in email, this is what it looks like. And just to allow you to compare and contrast, this is the campus pass in the app. This is the campus pass by email. So you can see they're virtually identical. And now here my other campus pass has arrived. It looks the same as the other red campus pass that I got. But as you can see here now, anytime a campus pass is generated, it is sent to a user's email. And if a user has an app account, it's sent to both their app and their email address. If a user does not have an app account, we simply send it to their email address that they provide here. So this is how you can send a campus pass to a user who does not have an app account. And this is useful if you have guests or visitors to campus who don't have an app account. Now these users will be able to get a campus pass that they can use to gain entry to campus. So if we use the same testing form here, but if we pretend that we are an unregistered user, so let's just say I'm a guest to campus. I'm going to be taken through the same form that you just saw in the app. Let's pretend that we were just tested. I'm going to choose I'll just choose like a picture here. I'll just choose a picture of I'll just choose a screenshot. Come through and go next, and we'll say, what's the result of your test? Do you want to submit? There you go. So this is what your unregistered user will see. And that email address that I just typed in, we are now sending a campus pass to that email address. So this can take a few minutes. So while we wait, let's just have a quick look at this campus pass. A few things to notice about it. The subject of the message is campus pass for, and then the date. You'll see it looks identical to the campus pass that is used in the app. Same colors, same graphic, same text. All of this can be specified in campus settings. And as well, just one quick thing to notice here, you'll see that this is my unregistered user. This is like an email that does not exist in our database. But for users who do exist in the database, if I can find one here, yeah, this is my user who does exist in our database. This user has a student ID associated with the account. And you can see here, for users who have a student ID, we send the student ID as part of the campus pass. If this user is a guest to campus, an unregistered user, they're not going to have a student ID, so there's no campus pass, no student ID sent here. And then just the last thing to cover here is this link at the bottom here, how to unsubscribe and resubscribe to these notifications. You'll see here to stop receiving these alerts, click here. So I'll show you the flow. If we click here, you're taken to an unsubscribe page. And you are automatically unsubscribed. That message blinked by a little fast, but you can see it was green. You can also see that I have been unsubscribed from the notifications that I was previously receiving. I can resubscribe here, and you'll see I get a success message, so I can toggle myself on and off here. If you turn these notifications off, and if you need to resubscribe, the way to do that is to go to your email, go back through your inbox and find a campus pass that has this link. Click this link. You'll be shown the same page as before with the toggle turned off, and you can simply click it to turn back on. That's how you resubscribe to receive these notifications. This page that I'm showing you now exists outside of Campus Cloud. You don't need a Campus Cloud account to access this page. That's how it is accessible to users who don't have an app account. It's completely standalone. But it's worth pointing out that this same functionality is available within Campus Cloud. This new account settings page here now has an email notification section, and you can turn on different kinds of email notifications directly from this page, including Campus Pass and the email notifications that you get when a user's case is updated. And it's worth mentioning as well that the change password function has moved. It used to be under the menu directly here, but we have put it under account settings. So now to change your password, we go to account settings, click change your password, and then from there the functionality works exactly like it did before. So that is the Campus Pass email functionality in a nutshell. Are there any questions about that?
There was a quick question from Allison on the color. It seemed like last week the color wasn't appearing, but it does now. She confirmed that. So probably there, I guess it was either some type of minor bug before or some type of deliverable that came later. But now it is color coded, so you can see that in the emails, as John Paul showed.
Yeah, that was like, there was a bug for Outlook where the color wouldn't show, and we fixed that. Yeah, so that should
Okay.
be.
I wonder, Allison, if you could confirm you're on Outlook, but either way, it should be resolved, and it seems like it's resolved for you now. So whatever that bug was seems to have been resolved now. But thanks for letting us know. Yep, Outlook it is confirmed. Great. So we're all aligned there.
Yep. That's basically what I wanted to show today.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, John Paul. It was a really great, concise and thorough demo. Hopefully that everybody was able to see, those two key features, which is our multi-audience support, so that, they really have the ability to limit the visibility for a given Campus Cloud user based on what they should see. I know that's a really key workflow for, HR and seeing staff versus students, and then also seeing the Campus Pass email, which is another key workflow for those that don't have the app or aren't able to log in, can't get through SSO, such as potentially visitors or guests or contractors who are coming on campus. So really hoping that these two features really help push and allow our customers to continue their strive around driving student success, specifically here on physical wellness and getting students back on campus so that they can get their best learning, as we kind of seen over the last little bit. We'll open up for our last few questions, see if they come in as we're closing up here. As we're waiting for any questions that might come in, know that this is recorded. We will be sharing the recording so that you can share with colleagues, and that we will be able to add to our playlist of different recordings and trainings so that you can always come back and refer to it. Fantastic. Well, if there is anything else that comes up, feel free to send any messages over to your closest rep, whether that's a CSC or support. Support is always there to be able to help you. Support at Red Education can answer a lot of these questions, and is always excited to and give the best customer experience we can. Otherwise, it is great to see you all. We look forward to seeing you again next month. John Paul, did you have anything else that you want to close up with?
Just wanted to say that it is always a pleasure to come and demo this stuff live, and to meet with customers, and to put myself through the ringer and show this off. It's a great pleasure to be able to do that, and thank you for inviting me to give this session.
Well, we were happy to have you here on this month's training session, and we're happy to have all our guests. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your days. I know it's a busy back to school period right now, so we really appreciate everybody showing up. We do thank you. We wish you to have a great end of your day and to continue on your strive for student success and student wellness. On that note, thanks everybody, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.